We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph and Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 56a. On the previous summit, the Gemara was discussing Rav Chisda's position within our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that if you have a Nazir who is a confirmed Mitzorah, so the days while he's a confirmed Mitzorah, they don't count towards the days of his Nazirus. And Rav Chisda said actually those days do count towards the days of the Nazirus, but the Mishnah is talking specifically about a Nazir Muetis, means to say a Nazir that's just a Nazir for 30 days, and when a Nazir becomes a Mitzorah, he has to shave, so he's going to need anyways an additional 30 days because you need 30 days of hair growth, and that's why in the scenario in our Mishnah, those days while he was a confirmed Mitzorah didn't count, again, just practically speaking, because he needs 30 days of hair growth, but otherwise the days that he's a confirmed Mitzorah do in fact count. That was Rav Chisda's position, and the Gemara now is in the middle of asking a question from a Mishnah later on. The Mishnah later on is talking about a Nazir who is a suffix that he was Tamei Meis and also a suffix that he's a Mitzorah, and so the Mishnah says, Ochel bekadshim la'achar shishim yom. He'll be able to eat kachim after 60 days. The idea over here is he was prevented from eating kachim as a Mitzorah. A Nazir is allowed to have kachim, but a Mitzorah cannot. It's going to take 60 days to purify himself from being a Mitzorah. V'shosa yayin u'metame l'meisim, and his Nazirus will be over. He'll be able to drink wine and become Tamei Meis la'achar meya ve'esrim yom, after 120 days. V'tani alon, we learned on that Mishnah, b'amed devarim amurim, when is that true? B'nazirus muetes, that's by a Nazirus muetes, because the idea is a regular Nazirus is 30 days. It's going to take double the amount of time, 60 days to eat kachim. Rashi will explain the cheshbon in a moment, and it's going to take 4 times that amount of time, meaning 120 days for the Nazirus to be finished. Avol b'Nazirus bas shana, but let's say you have a situation where the person was a Nazir for 1 year, and he's a suffix Tamei Meis and a suffix Mitzorah, so then it's the exact same mathematics, the same calculation, but you'll just have to multiply a year by 2 and a year by 4. Ochel b'kachim la'achar shtei shanim, he'll be able to eat kachim after 2 years. It'll take 2 years for him to purify himself from being a Mitzorah. V'shosa yayin u'metame l'meisim la'achar arba shanim, he'll be able to drink wine and become Tamei Meis after 4 years. After 4 years, that's when the Nazirus will be finished. Rashi explains, Ochel b'kachim la'achar shishim v'shosa yayin u'metame l'meisim la'achar kof chaf yom. Again, the idea is it's going to take 2 terms, 60 days to be able to have kachim. It's going to take 4 terms, 120 days for the Nazirus to be finished, for him to be able to drink wine and become Tamei Meis. And Rashi explains, She'ilu hayatame vadai umuchlet vadai. Let's say we were talking about a scenario where it wasn't a suffix. Let's say we were talking about a scenario where you had a Nazir who was certainly Tamei Meis, and it was a Nazir who was certainly a confirmed Mitzorah. So in that case, hayatzarach legaleach la'alter teglachas tzaras. So what would have to happen in such a situation? What he would do is, first of all, he would shave himself immediately. There are 2 shavings by a Mitzorah, so he'd shave himself immediately for the tzaras. Uvesov shiva yamim teglachas l'mei sifro maybe carbon tzaras. Then he waits 7 days. He does that second shaving after the counting, and then he brings the carbon tzaras, and he's able to eat kachim. That would be in a normal scenario. And the point is that in a normal scenario, even though a Nazir is not allowed to shave, but there's a halacha that if the Nazir is a Mitzorah, he's allowed to shave. Here we're talking about a Mitzorah suffix. It's a doubt whether he's a Mitzorah. That's why shaving becomes a problem. In any case, v'yachagach limnos shiva de teglachas nazirus tuma. In this case of a Nazir who was certainly Tamei Meis and certainly Mitzorah, so he would go through that process of purification for 7 days in terms of the Mitzorah. Then he would count 7 days in terms of the Nazirus of Tuma, and he would shave v'yachagach limnos shaloshim the Nazirus tahara. And then now he's finished taking care of the situation of Mitzorah. He's taking care of the situation of Nazirus Tuma, and then he'd be able to count his 30 days of Nazirus of tahara. And the point is, the shaving by tzaras is actually docha, the prohibition of a Nazir shaving, and therefore he'd be allowed to take care of it in a situation where he was certainly a Mitzorah. And that's what we're going to learn later on in the Mishnah in the other parak. The teglachas hanega, that the shaving for the tzaras dochel teglachas hanazir, pushes off the prohibition of a nazir to shave bisman shu vadei, but that's only true when he's a certain mitzorah. V'lo bisman shu suffik. It's not true if he's doubtful whether he's a mitzorah or not. V'nimtza ochel bekachim lachar shiva yamim. So in a normal case where he's a confirmed mitzorah for certain, then he'd be able to eat kachim after 7 days. Takes 7 days to purify from mitzorah. V'shosa yayin u'metami l'meisim la'achar arboim va'arboa yom, and then he'd be able to drink wine and become tamei meis, meaning the Nazirus would be over after 44 days. Why 44 days? Because it's a 30-day Nazirus, and then you have to add 7 days for the purification of the Mitzorah, which happens right at the beginning, another 7 days for the Nazirus of Tumah, and then when he starts the Nazirus of Tahara, that's after 14 days, that's 30 more days. 30 plus 14 is 44 days. So that would be in a normal situation. But here we're dealing with a situation where we're not sure whether he's Tamei Meis, and we're not sure whether he's a confirmed Mitzorah. So now at that point in time, he's not allowed to shave for his tzaras right away. Because again, he might be a Nazir right now, not allowed to shave, so he's got to wait. Therefore, what he's got to do is he has to wait 60 days in order to eat kachim. It's really going to take him 60 days to be able to get rid of the tzaras. How so? Let's say the guy comes to us and says, hey, I want to shave for my tzaras right away. I'm ready to purify myself. I'm ready to do my first of the 2 shavings. So Omrim Lo, they say to him, no, Shema Lo Hiyisa Tameh. Maybe 1 second, maybe you're not Tameh at all. Velo Muchlin, maybe you're not a Mitzorah at all. And therefore, V'yata Rashoy Legaleach at Shloshim Yom. So you can't really shave until 30 days go by. When 30 days go by, now at that point in time, you have served that first possible Nazirus. So Bolo L'Sof Shloshim, now he comes at the end of 30 days, so he'll be able to do at that point the first shaving for Tzaras after 30 days. However, Ubikesh Lishtos Yayin, but let's say he says, I want to drink wine now, I'm totally ready. Omrim Lo, we say, how do you know you're ready for wine? Tameh Ha'yisa, maybe you were actually a Nazir that's Tameh, Velo Muchlet, and maybe you were not a confirmed Mitzorah, but Tiglachas Rishona Shasisa Hi Tiglachas Suma, maybe that first time you shaved was really the shaving for being a Nazir Tameh, V'yatamudr Legalech, Kol Shloshim Yom, and you can't, and you're not allowed to shave now for another 30 days. Because you still haven't served your Naziris Tahara, your Naziris of purity. You got to wait another 30 days. V'yomit shloshim yom, so then he waits the other 30 days, umegalech, and then he can do the second shaving of Mitzorah, harei shishim yom. That's why it takes 60 days to purify from being a Mitzorah, because he can't shave for the first 30 days, he might be a Nazir, and then for the second 30 days, he might be serving the Naziris, because maybe that first one was not the Naziris of Tahara. That's 60 days. Now after 60 days, he says, well, am I done with my Naziris yet? Bolo lishtos yayin, now he wants to drink wine after 60 days. Omrim lo, so then we could say to him, maybe not. Muchlata yisa v'lo tameh, perhaps you were in fact a Mitzorah, and you've gotten rid of the Mitzorah through the 2 shavings, but maybe you weren't a Nazir Tameh. And those 2 shavings you did, those were the 2 shavings of Tzaras. Maybe your Nazirus is actually starting now on day number 60. So he's got to do another 30 days. And he does his 30 days, and he shaves Harei Tishim Yom, that's 90 days. Now he wants to drink wine after 90 days. Omrim lo, they say to him, well, maybe you actually were Mitzorah, and you were actually Tamei Meis, and it took 60 days to get rid of the Tzaras, and maybe after 90 days, that's when you took care of the Nazirus of Tumah. Again, the first 2 shavings were for Tzaras, the third one was for the Teglachas Tumah, the shaving for the fact that you were Tamei. And maybe on day 90 is the start of your pure Nazirus, and now he's going to count another 30 days. What you have now is 120 days, 4 shavings. It comes that he comes out that he eats kachim after 60 days. That's certainly true. The teglachas tzaras vade kodemis, he's certainly taken care of the shavings for tzaras at that point in time. That was first. Once he brings his carbon for tzaras, he's now allowed to have kachim. But again, he's not able to have wine until after 120 days, as I explained. Now, on this Mishnah, the Tosefta said, that's all true by a 30-day Nazirus. You multiply by 4, it's going to be 120 days. But let's say it would be a year-long Nazirus. You have to multiply by 4, the Tosefta said, and it's going to be 4 years. Again, the same thing. He had a Safek Tamei Meis, and he was also a Safek whether he was a Mitzorah, B'yom Rishon Shel Nazirus, and that was the first day of the Nazirus. So now it's going to take 2 years to eat kachim. Because maybe he wasn't Tamei, he wasn't a Mitzorah. He's not going to eat the whole first year, because again, in that first year, he's not able to eat. At the end of the first year, you could say, well, maybe at the end of the first year, maybe he was Tamei and he wasn't a Mitzorah. Maybe that's the time of the Nazirus Tara. So he can't shave now again until the end of the second year, meaning in this case, it's actually going to take him 2 years to take care of the Tzaras, and that's why he's not able to have kachim for the 2 years. Now, then we could still say, Shema Mitzora Vitame Haya, maybe he was both a Mitzora and Tame, Ushnei Teglachios, Rishonos Lo Ololo El Tzaras, maybe the first 2 shavings were for the Tzaras, Vitiglach Shlish is also Lo Nazirus Tuma, and the 3rd shaving is actually for the Nazirus of Tuma, Mikan Vaelach Maskal Nazirus Tara, and it's only in the 4th year that is the pure Nazirus, Meinu Megaleach at Sof Shana Revius, and then he shaves at the end of the 4th year, Nimsa Ochel Bekachim, Leachar Shtei Shana Mimonav Shach, again it comes out, after 2 years he can have Kachim, that's for sure true, Lefi Shekvar Gilach, Shnei Teglachios, Vitiglachas Tzaras Kodemis B'chol Makom, he's taken care of the Tzaras with the 2 shavings, Kedavran, like we said before, Benimsa Shosiyayin, Mitamei Lamesim, Lachar Arba Shanim, and it comes out in this case, he'll be able to drink wine and become Tamei Meis after 4 years. And so the Gemara now continues and asks its question on Rav Chisda. Now, if you're going to say like Rav Chisda, then in a long Nazirus, the days that the Nazir is a Mitzorah actually do count towards the days of the Nazirus. So then we said that in that 4th year, that's when he's really beginning his Nazirus of Tahara, because it could very well be that the first 2 years he was purifying himself from being a Mitzorah, and the 3rd year it could be he was doing the Nazirus of Tumah, but at the beginning of the 4th year, he's starting the Nazirus of Tahara, so then Tiz Gilei B'Shalosh Shanim, Ushloshim Yom, it should actually be good enough if he just does 3 years and then an additional 30 days. Because at the end of the 3 years, he's finished taking care of the Mitzorah, he's finished taking care of the Nazirus of Tumah, and now he just needs to do the Nazirus of Tahara, but all those days he counted when he was a Mitzorah should still count towards the Nazirus, and therefore he really just needs 30 days for the hair growth. He doesn't need a full year, so it should have been enough with 3 years and 30 days, but rather it seems from here, not like Rav Chisda, it seems like the days when he's a Mitzorah do not count towards the Nazirus of Tahara, and that's why he needs a full 4th year. And the Gemara continues, V'od Mesev Rav Ashi. And further, Rav Ashi asks on Rav Chisda from the following Brisa. The Brisa says, Ein li elo yemei tumah, she'en olin lo min aminyan. I only know that the days when a Nazir is tamei, that doesn't count towards the count of his days of Nazirus. Yemei chiluto minai. And how do we know that the days when he's a confirmed Mitzorah, how do we know that that doesn't count towards his Nazirus? V'dinu, we learn that as follows. Yemei tumah megaleach umevi carbon. During the days of tumah, he shaves and he brings a carbon. Yemei chiluto megaleach umevi carbon. And also confirmed Mitzorah. He shaves and he brings a carbon. Just like the days when a Nazir is tamei, it doesn't count towards the number of days of his Nazirus. So too, the days when he's a confirmed Mitzorah, they do not count towards the number of days of his Nazirus. The Brisa says, "Lo imamrid b'mei tumaso shekain mevatel ben asakodmim." You can't bring a proof because the days of his tumah they actually nullify the earlier count. He has to totally start over. Tomar b'mei chiluto. Whereas you can say by the days of confirmed mitzorah, shein mevatel ben asakodmim, they do not nullify the earlier count. He picks up where he left off. And so the Gemara says, Amrid kal v'chomer. We say the following kal v'chomer. Uman nazir bekever. If when you're talking about a nazir bekever, that's a nazir who becomes a nazir while he's in a cemetery. Shesaro roy leteglachas nazirus. His hair actually is fit to be shaved for the nazirus. Ein olin lo min aminyan. But those days do not count towards the number of his days of nazirus. Yemei chiluto, the days of confirmed mitzorah. She'ein saro roy leteglachas nazirus, where his hair is not fit to be shaved for the nazirus. Lo kol shekain. Wouldn't that certainly be the case? Now, I only know that that's true during the time when he's a confirmed mitzorah, that the days do not count towards his nazirus. How do you know the days when the mitzorah is counting? How do you know those days as well? And the Gemara and the Brisa says, "V'dinu." We can learn it out as follows. And Tosas explain, "V'yod mesav Ravashi ein li eli yemei tumaso shein olin lo." I only know the days when he's tamei. That doesn't count towards his nazirus. T'chsiv hayamim harishonim yiplu, because it says again the nazir tamei. He brings his carbon tumah, and the earlier days he counted, they fall away. They don't count. He has to start over. Yemei chiluto minayin. How do we know the days when he's a confirmed mitzorah don't count towards the days of his nazirus? V'dinu. We learn it out as follows: Yemei tumaso megaleach umevi carbon. When the nazir is tamei, he shaves and brings a carbon. Dahainu asham nazir tamei. That's the carbon asham that a nazir tamei brings. V'yemei chiluto megaleach umevi carbon sarato asham mitzorah. And if he's a confirmed mitzorah, he also shaves and brings a carbon. He brings the asham of a mitzorah. And then the Brisa said, Lo imamrid v'yemei tumaso shekem mevatel b'anas hakodman. On the other hand, during the time that he's a nazir tamei, it actually undoes any of the previous count. But when it comes to a confirmed mitzorah, the earlier days that he counted are not undone. He just resumes. He picks up where he left off. That's what we learned earlier. And Tosas continue, Man Nazir bekever shesaro roila teglachas nazirus. Let's say he became a Nazir in a cemetery. Shemamar hareini Nazir kashaya bebeis hakvaris. The halacha is, if a person says, I'm going to be a Nazir, and he's in a cemetery when he makes that declaration, saro roila teglachas tara. That hair, he actually doesn't have to shave it off. The hair that he has on himself at that moment is going to be the hair that he's going to shave for his nazirus of purity. She'enu megaleach umevi korban tumasu. In that case, he doesn't actually have to shave and bring a korban tuma. Kedamrina le'el b'perek shlishi. That's something we learned out earlier in the third parak. Ela megaleach l'sof shloshim yom b'shvil nazirus. He just shaves at the end of 30 days for his nazirus. V'afa pichein. But even in that situation, nevertheless, ein yemei nazirus beveis hakvaris olim lo l'naziruso. The days of nazirus in the cemetery don't count towards the days of nazirus. Ela kashayotze yaschil limnos yemei chilut yaschil limnos. Rather, when he leaves the cemetery, he begins to count, and so therefore the Brisa says yemei chiluto. So when it comes to the days of confirmed mitzora, she'ein saro roila teglachas nazirus tara, there his hair is not going to count towards the shaving of nazirus. Shekein tzarach legalech b'shvil tzarato. He's actually going to need a shave for his saras. Eino din shelo yalo lo min aminyan. Certainly those days when he's a confirmed mitzora, where the hair on his head is not even going to be shaved for the nazirus, certainly those days will not count towards the days of his nazirus. And then the Brisa said yemei svara. What about the days of his counting as a mitzora? That refers to la'achar shenisrapi. That refers to when a mitzora is healed and he's ready to be purified. Shum megaleach kol sara. What he does is, again, we said there's two shavings. So he does the first shaving, umona shiva yom, then he counts 7 days, v'chozer megalech, then he shaves again, v'yazu niter legamri, and that's the end of the purification process of a mitzora. So what about those 7 days that are being counted? Minayin sh'osan shiva, ein olan lo min aminyan. How do you know those 7 days don't count towards the nazirus? Uksas kasha, Tosas leaves off that it is a little difficult to taste b'kal v'chomer min nazir bekever shesara roila teglachas tara. Why not learn it out from kal v'chomer of the person who declared his nazirus while he was in a cemetery? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis.